Hello, Alex here, and today we're going to talk about the Pentax 75mm f4.5 wide-angle lens for the Pentax 6.7 system cameras. Full disclosure, I have actually sold this lens, so my B-roll footage is from before I got the new light, but it's an excellent lens, it just wasn't for me. Let's get into it. Starting with an overview of the lens, it's 81mm long and 92mm wide, so it's rather long and thick, unlike most Pentax 6.7 lenses, which are one or the other. It's compatible with any of the Pentax 6.7 or 6x7 cameras and attaches using the inner bayonet mount. Of course, it can also be adapted to other systems, including Pentax's 645 lineup, other 35mm SLRs or 645 SLRs, and mirrorless cameras. It weighs in at 555 grams naked or 610 grams with the hood. The front filter thread is 82mm in diameter, which is quite large, unfortunately. This is a prime lens, so it does not zoom, and it has a fixed focal length of 75mm. In terms of diagonal field of view, on a 35mm camera, it's approximately equivalent to a 37mm lens, and in terms of vertical field of view, it's about equivalent to a 32mm lens. So in the Pentax 6.7 lineup, this is one of the two general purpose, not too wide-angle lenses. Back when I first got this lens, I paid €300 for the lens, the front and rear caps, the lens hood, and shipping all in. Speaking of the lens hood, it's a pinchy type and fits inside your front filter threads, so it is not possible to attach any filters or the lens cap itself while the lens hood is attached. However, if you want to use the hood with filters, you can just attach the filter first and then put the hood on top. The lens has a maximum aperture of f4.5, which steps all the way down to f22. Going from f8 down to f22, there are half-stop clicks. However, there is only a single increment between f4.5 and f8. The aperture itself is comprised of 8 slightly rounded aperture blades, so you get more or less circular, slightly octagonal out-of-focus highlights. f4.5 is pretty good on a 6x7 negative. A lot of lenses cap out at f4 in this format. However, it's not mind-blowing, which is why its cousin exists. We'll get back to that. However, f4.5 is more than bright enough for accuracy under most conditions, apart from like dim indoor lighting using the TTL prism. It's pretty good. The lens can focus from infinity down to about 70 centimeters, so your maximum magnification is about 0.14x, or a maximum reproduction ratio of 1:7. This isn't mind-blowing by any means, and it is one of the weaknesses of the lens compared to its cousin, which we're now going to talk about. There is an alternative to this lens in the Pentax 6.7 lineup, that being the 75mm f2.8 AL spherical lens. It is much smaller, much lighter, more than a stop faster in terms of maximum aperture. I don't remember exactly how close it focuses, but it's a 1:3 reproduction ratio and 0.3 or 0.33 magnification. That combined with the faster maximum aperture of f2.8 makes that lens a lot more appealing for people who like shallow depth of field and close focusing with moderate wide-angle lenses. If you think of something like a 35mm f1.4, that's the closest you're going to get on a 6x7 camera. There's no other 6.7 mount that offers that. But that lens costs 4 to 6 times as much as the one we're talking about today. So it's more expensive, it's more desirable. Also, I've read that it has a lot more barrel distortion. If you don't like correcting that, if you like projecting slides or doing prints in the darkroom, that's not going to be as good if you have a lot of straight lines in your work. But that's a small difference, and the price is the main thing. As with all Pentax 6.7 lenses, this lens is manual focus only, and it does have quite a loose focus ring compared to some of the others, but not so loose that it's a problem. It's significantly looser or easier to turn than my 105 or 45, but again, it's not really a problem unless you're brushing it against your side. Maybe if you're hyperfocal shooting, it could be a problem. Check it every so often. Generally speaking, it's not bad, but it's just worth noting that it isn't as tight. Then again, that could just be my copy of the lens. Despite the ridiculous bulbous front element, I've had no issues with ghosting or flare shooting directly into the sun, which is something you can easily do with a wide-angle lens. I mean, there's a lot of sky potentially in your frame where the sun could be, or bright points of light of any kind. And field curvature is not an issue whatsoever. The field is extremely flat, so if you're into architecture with a moderate wide angle or landscapes, this could be a really, really good choice. Firstly, the 32 to 37mm equivalent field of view makes this lens, as I said, a general purpose wide angle lens for the Pentax 6-7 cameras. It's very easy to slot this into your workflow if you want something a little bit wider than your 105, maybe not so much your 90, that's probably too close, a 105 or 135, I think there's a 120. If you don't want the significantly wider angle of the 55mm f3.5 or f4, yeah, this is a lot easier to slot into a workflow for a lot of people. As I said, it's not for me. This is the main reason that I sold the lens. I just didn't vibe with the field of view, so to speak. It's a little bit too tight and a bit too similar to the 105 for my personal taste, but that might be exactly what you want. However, the point stands that 75mm on 6x7 is a very general, easy to use focal length, regardless of whether or not I personally like it. The focus throw on the focus ring is absolutely excellent. Overall, it's about 250 to 270 degrees, and infinity down to just 1 meter is about 180 to 200 degrees of that. That's absolutely crazy. You can get extremely precise with your focus. Now, you're not getting immensely shallow depth of field on f4.5 on 6x7, but you can get some good separation at closer distances, or if you just want to focus really precisely, wide open, or maybe at f8, you can do that quite easily, and that kind of compensates for the looseness of the focus ring so much, because if you bump it, 5-10 degrees, it's not a huge issue. It doesn't change your focus point an incredible amount versus a lot of lenses that are barely 60 or 80 degrees in terms of their focus throw. The lens is extremely sharp throughout the aperture range. It does get a bit better when you stop down from f4.5 to f8. However, I've never really had any problems shooting at f4.5. Yes, it can be better stop down, but it's not soft, if that makes sense. Additionally, again, for people who might be into this lens for moderate wide angle, architectural, or landscape photography, the corner sharpness never really tails that far behind the center sharpness. It's very consistent across the field, which may be more important to you than peak sharpness in the center, just to have even sharpness across the frame. If that's something you like, or even if it isn't, it's nice to have in this lens. As Pentax 6-7 lenses go, this is pretty affordable. Like I said, I got mine shipped with both caps and the hood for just 300 euros. The fact that the 75mm f2.8 spherical lens exists and is desirable drives down the price of this lens because it's just seen as undesirable by comparison, even if it might work great for you. Lastly, despite it being a very large lens, it's very light for its size, significantly lighter than any of the other lenses I have for this system, which means that although it will take up a good bit of space in your bag, it won't hurt your back too much. 82mm filters cost a fortune, and there's no way around that. The combination of the lens's wide angle and large bulbous front element necessitate a large front filter thread, and that's just unfortunate. This is the second reason that I decided to sell the lens in the end, as I'm trying to work towards a 77 and 58/49mm filter kit, and having just one 82mm front filter thread lens in my kit just isn't going to work for me. However, a huge number of DSLR and mirrorless lenses now use 82mm filter threads as a standard, especially your 24-70 f2.8. So if you have filters of this size, that's not going to be a disadvantage for you, personally, but it does still require expensive filters. Practically speaking, the lens hood is more of a decoration or a bumper to protect against damage, which to be fair is important with such a large bulbous front element, but It's the exact same lens hood that the 45mm f4 uses, and that means that it's not that useful because it's designed to not obstruct the view of the 45mm lens, so it doesn't really cover the extreme, just out of frame corners of the 75mm frame. So it's not that useful, but then again, the lens performs well with regards to ghosting and contrast and flare anyway. It's just more symbolic than practically beneficial. So honestly, if you buy the lens and it doesn't come with the hood, I probably wouldn't stress about it too much. Again, the lens is big. There's no way around that. It might be light and easy to carry, but it does take up quite a lot of space. Like I said at the start of the video, a lot of lenses for this camera system are either thick or long, but this one is both. So thank you for sticking around to the end of this video where I reviewed the Pentax 75mm f4.5 for the Pentax 6.7 system. Don't let the fact that I don't like it dissuade you from buying it if it's a focal length that you like and you can get it for a good price, which will not be difficult. Personally, as I distill my Pentax 6.7 kit down to just 2 lenses, I find that the 75 and the 105, which I'm definitely keeping, are just a bit too similar. However, Matt Day and a lot of other people enjoy using 35-ish and 50mm-ish lenses together because you can get very different shots with them, but they're not so different in terms of their angle of view and perspective distortion that a client would necessarily know they were taken with different lenses. So Matt Day is a particularly good example of how you can use those different focal lengths together to create a similar, consistent look without having to commit to just a single lens. However, that's not for me as I try to distill my kit down to just 2 lenses. That's going to be it for this video, so stay safe and bye bye for now. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at Shaka1277 for new pictures every single day. If you like this video and enjoy what I do on the channel, please consider subscribing or checking out my Patreon where the tiers start at just €1 per month.